There's nothing for this, right? So, spoiler alert, the Trump tariff trade war with China ends up exactly the way it started before Liberation Day.
Yay!
Just so you know, everything is back to where it was before Trump started his tariff wars. Everything is, in fact, it might be even a little less because India got screwed up. Well, so Trump cuts tariffs on China after a truly great meeting with Xi. President Trump said Thursday that he would cut tariffs on imports from China, signaling that the highly anticipated summit here with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, had lowered the temperature in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. Trump said Chinese imports would now be subject to a 47% tariff, down 10 percentage points from the average rate before the meeting. Keep that in mind. I'm going to explain to you what this actually means. In exchange, Xi Jinping agreed to resume purchasing soybeans. Did you know they stopped buying soybeans, which was screwing over American farmers?
Liberation!
And to delay restrictions on rare earth minerals for a year. So we need those rare earth minerals that China has.
For war on China.
For war on China. Trump said, granting that the United States a reprieve from controls that could jeopardize supply chains for cell phones, fighter jets, and many other products. So China has this fight. So this whole idea that we were ever going to go to war with China is one of the craziest. First of all, they're a nuclear power. Secondly, they make all our stuff.
We couldn't win a war with Nigeria, everyone. Just so you know.
Just so you know.
Being conclusive at best.
Right. So our friend Arnaud Bertrand, he knows the United States press is not reporting this correctly. So he's got some inside information or some insight, and we're going to share it with you. He says, perhaps unsurprisingly, I haven't seen many media outlets report accurately on the deal reached between Trump and Xi today, most forgetting to mention crucial aspects of it, and almost all failing to contextualize the 47% tariff figure quoted by Trump. So they're not. So let's break it down. The United States is going to remove the so-called 50% rule that it implemented in September for 1 year, in exchange of which China will suspend its rare earth export controls for 1 year. Okay? So what does this mean? The removal of the 50% rule is absolutely key, yet almost no media reported it, only mentioning that China had agreed to suspend its rare earths exports controls for 1 year. So they only reported half of the deal, the part that China's doing. China's going to take off their restrictions on exporting rare earth minerals to the United States. That's the only part that got really reported in the United States. They didn't report that we're also getting rid of the 50% rule. As a reminder, the 50% rule was the main reason why China retaliated with the rare earth export controls. It was a huge escalation by the United States as it effectively increased the number of Chinese companies on the entity list by 14 times, from 1,400 companies to 20,000 companies, meaning 14 times more Chinese companies were cut off from the Western financial system, forbidden to use the United States dollar, etc. The U.S. will drop its overall, so they got rid of that. And now the U.S. is going to drop its overall tariffs on China to 47%, meaning that China now benefits from 16% tariffs as part of the Liberation Day tariff policy. Let me break that down for you. Of course, Trump would mention the overall number to make it sound like he didn't cave on his Liberation Day tariffs. But when one looks into the details, China actually negotiated him down to approximately 16% on his Liberation Day tariffs, down from the initial 34%. And way down from the 125% peak. So it's actually 16%. And they got the so-called fentanyl tariff cut in half on top of that. How so? First of all, before Trump 2.0 even got inaugurated, tariffs on Chinese goods were already standing at a weighted average of 20.7%. Soon after taking office in February and March, so before Liberation Day, Trump added 20% on top of that in the form of his so-called fentanyl tariff. So before Liberation Day, the overall tariff on China was already 40%. Okay, all right. Then on Liberation Day, Trump added a 34% reciprocal tariff on top of that. So it was 74% overall tariffs, which he again escalated to 125% by April 10th after China retaliated. This brought the peak to 145% just from Liberation Day and fentanyl tariffs alone, or 165% including the pre-existing tariffs. The fact that the overall rate is now down to 47%, given the fact that the deal includes a 50% reduction on the fentanyl tariff, down from 20% to 10%, means that China has now negotiated the Liberation Day tariffs down from 125% to 16%. Since 20% plus 10% fentanyl plus 16% Liberation Day is approximately equal to 47% overall tariffs. This means that when it comes to Liberation Day tariffs, China will stand roughly on par with the European Union.
So good.
And South Korea, which are both at 15%. The U.S. will suspend its hostile actions on China's ships and shipbuilding industry, in exchange for which China will also suspend its retaliatory measures. So I don't need to go into that. Here's some other parts of the deal. Soybeans. China mentioned that both sides reached consensus on expanding agricultural products trade, while Trump mentioned that China will buy tremendous amounts of soybeans, which will all probably mean that China agreed to resume buying U.S. soybeans, which they had stopped buying as a retaliatory measure as leverage in this trade war. Fentanyl. Both sides who agreed on an anti-drug cooperation regarding fentanyl, which is language that pretty boilerplate in U.S.-China discussion, so nothing new there. Here's the one thing I don't get. It says China mentioned that they agreed to properly resolve the TikTok issue. I thought it was resolved because it got bought by a Zionist Jewish guy.
What was that? Maybe that's how it was resolved.
All in all, I would say that the key feature of this deal is the reciprocity and almost religious balance in every aspect. Each concession matched by the other. Each suspension mirrored. It shows we're now dealing with peer competitors who can effectively keep each other in check. So what he's saying is that, from the way I read it, is that this is a mutually beneficial deal with exactly the same stuff happening on each side.
So it's less of a deal than we had before.
So we are not able to squeeze China, because China can squeeze us right back. So what we ended up with is a fair trade deal to both sides.
Ooh, I hope a new Cold War is coming. That'd be fun.
You can see how immensely things have changed if you contrast this deal with Trump's so-called Phase 1 agreement from his first term, with its unilateral Chinese commitments to buy American products and enact structural reforms to rebalance trade, with the United States warning it would vigilantly monitor Chinese compliance, all from an era when the United States could still essentially dictate terms. None of that unequal framework survived. So we used to have, in Trump's first term, we had an unequal trade framework with China. None of that has survived this new deal, because China's more powerful now, and we are less powerful. And so none of the unequal framework survives here. Instead of Washington trying to reform China based on our interests, all it can now do is learn to coexist with China. So we used to be able to dictate policy to China. That's all over. Now they are an co-equal partner. And he said, get this, one more thing. He says, I was actually wrong in my post below on the new tariffs on China after the Trump-Xi Jinping deal, because it looks like Trump lied with his 47% overall tariffs figure. The White House fact sheet that was just released confirms that the reciprocal tariff, meaning the Liberation Day tariff, applied to China is now just 10%. The lowest applicable rate that I think only Singapore and the UK benefited from to date. So they've gotten a sweeter deal. And when you pair this with the reduction of 10% of the so-called fentanyl tariff, it effectively means that China's overall tariff rate is back to exactly where things stood before Liberation Day. So this was all for effing nothing. So Trump went through all this drama just to end up right where he was in late March.
Well, that's where you're wrong, because Israel's almost done killing them kids now.
Yeah. And just to let you know, this is from the White House. There it is. The current 10% reciprocal tariff will remain in. So there it is. They're admitting it's 10%, not 16. This is an interesting precedent that's been set. Companies that went through the effort. So a lot of companies tried to shift their manufacturing from China to like India because of Trump's big trade war with China. And now they're regretting it as China ends up with lower tariffs than India. The New York Times has a piece on a guy who did just that, just like thousands of other companies. And he laments that the time he had spent on building up, all the time he spent on building up production in India, at least for the time being, he said, I'm not going to spend any more energy trying to get out of China, meaning I'm going to keep manufacturing in China. I'm going to stop trying to move it to India because now China has lower tariffs than India. And here it is. Will Trump's tariff deal tilt the playing field back towards China? For Travis McMaster, the general manager of Cocoon USA, an outdoor and travel brand, ordering products from his foreign suppliers this year has been a lot like gambling. After reading the news of a trade truce between the United States and China last week, McMaster has was relieved to have finally gotten a win. He estimated that President Trump's decision to lower tariffs on Chinese products would save him roughly $30,000 in tariff costs on a shipment the company has coming in from China this week, enough to perhaps hire another seasonal employee in the small Washington town where Cocoon is based. But the tariff deal came with a downside. Cocoon had begun shifting some production to India this spring to avoid the high tariffs on China. But in the past few months, Trump has raised tariffs on India by 50% while dropping tariffs on Cocoon's Chinese goods to 30%, scrambling the company's plans. But Mr. McMaster lamented the time he had spent on building up production in India. At least for the time being, I'm not going to spend any more energy trying to get out of China. The piece also quotes Sean Stein, the president of the U.S.-China Business Council, who said that from what he's seeing on the ground, companies don't want to relocate out of China anymore because of the instability and unpredictability of where tariffs might land in other markets, and because there is simply no other place in the world with the manufacturing ecosystem and cost efficiencies that you get in China. All in all, Trump is managing the rather ironic feat of convincing companies that China is actually the safe, stable choice. So after all of this, what the effect of what Trump did with these tariffs is actually convince all the companies of the world that China is actually the safest place to do your manufacturing.
Yeah.
Well,
they're not always at war.
And they're not always, that's right. And here, Apple had moved a lot of its manufacturing to India because of this. And now they're finding out they're getting screwed. They're going to have to pay a higher tariff, and their taxes in India are costing them way more money than it would have cost them in China. So now you know that's the whole story. So everything ended up exactly where it was, except India gets screwed, Apple gets screwed, other companies, and now Trump has convinced the world that China is the safest and best place to do your manufacturing. Isn't that ironic? Yes, the answer is yes. So the whole point of all these tariffs was to bring manufacturing back to the United States and reinvigorate our middle class and manufacturing base here in the United States. Well, that didn't happen. I was willing to see how it played out. I don't know anything about international tariffs and how they work. Nope. Turns out nobody does. And so now it turns out that that's not bringing manufacturing back to the United States. That's what it seems like to me. You have something different, let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear my jokes about this, come see me the day after Thanksgiving in Burbank, California at Flappers Comedy Club. It's December 28th. It's a day off. Everybody has Friday off. And then we'll see you December 6th in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, January 11th, Waikiki at the Blue Note in Waikiki. Go to jimmydore.com for links for tickets. Over to Steph.
Jimmy, do you want to do one more story before we go to Rumble, or are you ready for Rumble?
I'll do one more.
All right, one more.
It's amazing how your phone rings during the show. But
I know. I can't
never,
believe
ever when I call you.
You know what? But it
Isn't
does.
it funny? Like
it
if I call
does.
you, your phone never rings.
It actually does. That's why I've been answering it, if you haven't noticed. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news. Besant already effing up deal. China saying Besant isn't sticking to his leader deal. Stupid negotiator. Oh, boy. All right, let's go here. Chia seeds are high in oxalates. Postscript.
Oh, you're shitting me.
That's what Postscript just said.
Oh. So those are the kind of kidney stones I get.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's what spinach is high in oxalate. That's why I stopped eating spinach. Oh, so that's maybe why I'm getting them now. Because I've been eating chia seeds like a maniac.
Oh.
Well, I'm going to see my kidney guy tomorrow.
Right?
So I'll ask him.
Postscripts.
Oh.
Hey, Postscripts. Thanks for that. That's very helpful. Much appreciated. Jimmy should eat fermented foods as well. It will do more wonders.
I do. I'm taking the kimchi.
Doing the kimchi. Guest suggestion, Paul Kudanek, author's History of the Xylem Imperialist Mafia. He's on Substack. Thank you for the recommendation. Sudan is also helping Greater Israel as UAE became Israel's proxy. They even deported a Palestinian engineer from UA for promoting BDS. Also, Sudan is part of the new Silk Road trade route to link China. Thank you, Goo81. Crazy aggressive chemtrail activity in Phoenix right now. Jimmy, please come to Phoenix. Look up dandelion salad as something to eat. Also, some fun etymology, dandelion, tooth of lion. Vienticus Prime.
What is that? Is that a pill?
The dandelion salad?
No, dandelion, tooth of lion.
No, the etymology, he was saying. The etymology is dandelion, tooth of lion.
Oh.
Back to Jimmy.
Okay, I didn't know what. No, back to stuff.
Oh. Flax has like 300 times phytoestrogens as soy Lu. Anthony Russo. Know any combat vets who act like Pete H? I don't. Patrick. Slam Peace. Kerp. We want more derps. They're the bees derps. Thank you for that one, Slam Peace.
I got tomorrow. I'm doing it.
Tomorrow.
My back.
Cadmus.
Got Aaron from the Scientology channel.
Cadmus, or is it Cadmu? You have to get your baby oil from locally sourced babies. Stay away from commercially processed babies. That's a great tip. Thank you for that. Hi, Jimmy. Be careful of dandelion root. Oxalates cause kidney stones. See Dr. Sally Norton's Toxic Superfoods. Oxalates cause kidney stones. Patrick H.
What does?
So, Jimmy, be careful of dandelion root.
Because it has oxalates?
Oxalates cause kidney stones.
But they say you're supposed to take...
Jimmy.
They say you're supposed to take dandelion for kidneys. All right, well, I'm going to ask my kidney guy tomorrow. Thanks for all the tips.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, guess what?
Oh, stay with Jimmy.